Inclusive teaching, supporting all students in the college classroom. Cultivate a growth mindset in your students.
In order to be truly inclusive in our teaching, we'll first need to buy into the idea that all students are capable of learning and that our job is to remove the obstacles that stand in the way of performing at their best. That can be a challenge sometimes, and so my particular strategy for that is to remind myself of situations where I have flipped my own mindset, where I did not believe that I was capable of learning something or doing something or performing at a certain level. So for instance, I always was not an athletic person. I was the one that was picked last in gym class for sports teams, etc. And so I always thought I would never do that. And then much later in my life, I found yoga as a form of physical activity, and there was a correspondence. And when that happened, through perseverance and commitment and practice and feedback, I was able to increase my strength, my flexibility, and my balance to the point that I can now stand on my hands, twist myself into a pretzel. All things that I never thought would be in the realm of the possible for me. And so I remind myself that if I could see this transformation in myself, I'm not special or unique in any way in this dimension. And so all students can do that as long as we actually have a belief in that and create the circumstances for them to perform optimally. If we're thinking about helping our students to shift their mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, we first need to realize that this is actually a challenging thing. It's a paradigm shift. It doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't happen easily. Partly because the fixed mindset is an identity statement. When we say, I am not good at math, it's a statement about who we are. It's a statement that has been reinforced over and over the years. So I'm trying to undo a deeply held belief that has become an identity, that has informed choices that students have made, majors that they've gone into, and so on. So it's been enacted in practice. It is possible to change it, but it will take time. What research shows is that the most successful interventions happen when it's not just one individual professor that is trying this, but it's a whole department that is aware that, for instance, a lot of students come in with math anxiety, and they are determined to address that. And this is what it looks like in the first year course, and this is what it looks like in the second year, and this is what it looks like in the upper division. In terms of things that individual instructors can do, I find that it helps to refocus our students' attributions. Because when we experience a failure, we have a human need to tell ourselves a story of why it went the way it went. And what research shows is that humans focus on causes that they have no control over. And the reality is that it's probably a mix of causes, some that we can control and some that we cannot control. So shifting the conversation to this, yes, this is true, this happened, you weren't feeling well that day, maybe the professor was unapproachable or this or that and the other, but these are the things that you can actually do to take control of the situation. And students respond well to that when it's been established very clearly the parts that they're in control of.
Instructors' assumptions about student performance definitely shape their definitions of competence or mastery. Sometimes it leads to having differential competencies or criteria for diverse students, particularly if the student is underprepared. There's a lowering of the bar, and there's less expectation that the student actually can meet it. Instead, what we need is for the instructor to have a sense that all students are capable of reaching the high bar set in the course. How they get there may be different based on their cultural orientations, their ways of processing information, their cultural ways of learning, but it does not mean that they can't get there. So affirming students' capacity to get there is an important part of how they are communicating mastery, how they are defining competence, being able to have a criterion reference point, learning target that the student needs to meet, and not lowering that bar for diverse students. And the reason why is if they don't, then students start to internalize some of those negative messages. And we have to be able to interrupt that pattern. This is particularly true for underprepared students. And what that means is there are two key things that instructors need to think about. First is acknowledging the social political context that has created underprepared students. And second, commit to helping students increase their capacity to take on rigorous content. And that means they need to be warm demanders of cognitive development, right? I like to think about it like a personal trainer, right? Making sure that they can do those cognitive reps so that they can start to build their capacity to actually take on more of this rigorous content. So the idea isn't to lower expectations and not to attribute low expectations to a culture of poverty. But in reality, actually understand inequity by design is what's at work, and being able to level the playing field by helping students accelerate their own learning.